So next up, we have Bettina Boon Falleur. As a quick introduction, Bettina is actually she's a member of Ethereum France, but she's also the organizer of EthCC, which is actually the biggest Ethereum conference in the world in 2021. And she's going to talk about governance and about how our ways of working are going to evolve in the future.
Thanks, Raoul. So, oh yeah, I'm going to have to do this next exercise. I'm going to talk about, after the technological aspects and the evolution of blockchain, I want to talk about the social and societal path that this tech is enabling. So yeah, I'm going to talk about blockchain more as a philosophy. Next. First of all, I just want to debunk certain myths. I hope we all agree on the following. One weird belief: blockchain is for anarchists, anti-systems, and libertarians. Not true. Even if many people who created blockchain have this belief system, you can use it, and it doesn't mean we all have to work in a libertarian society. Blockchain is crypto, and crypto is a Ponzi scheme. Again, not true. Blockchain, as it was explained, is a bit more than crypto, and crypto is not a Ponzi scheme. It's a belief system the same way democracies are a belief system or capitalism is a belief system. And last, blockchains aim to kill many jobs, bank, institution, notaries, etc. That is just called evolution. Next, what I want to talk about is us. It all comes back to humans and our need to collaborate in order to survive. Now we live in an era of super fast communication where no trust exists, and there's a need for middlemen everywhere, in our democratic states, in our political systems, and in our economic systems. And I want to start with a quick game with all of you. So I want here, by show of hands, to see who here believes that democracy is the best or least worst system we have come up with to collaborate as a group. Okay. And now another game. Who here believes, by show of hands, that capitalism is the best or least worst system we have come up with to organize ourselves? Okay, so we all agree that it's the best or least worst. Personally, I think it's the least worst. Next. Why? Because today we're touching the limits of our democratic, capitalistic state nations. Next. We have very centralized systems, such as France, where we can see how unhappy and disengaged citizens are. And it's not only due to their nature, but the obligation to vote in a very black and white fashion and with no nuance or collaboration. The system is thought for dissension. Additionally, citizens feel really far away from the system as they are only allowed to vote once every 5 years and have no control over the fact that the elected president will respect his campaign's promises. And so their only choice is to not re-elect 5 years later. Next. Then we've got awesome decentralized systems, such as Belgium, where the dream was coordination and the result is consensus à la belge, where nobody understands anything and everybody feels like they lose a little bit all the time. You don't even know if the party you vote on, who is the winner of the election, is going to make it into the coalition. And most of the time, our system fails in efficiency and transparency. Let's remember that we've got a prime minister, president ministers, vice presidents in our very small country. Next, where we're touching the limits of our capitalistic states. So today there's a huge decorrelation between capital and workforce, where we started with cooperatives, where people would stay together, their workforce and their capital, in order to have a stronger impact. Today we have company shareholders who detain capital and don't necessarily actively work for the company, and company workers who don't have any long-term incentive except for their salary. Moreover, moreover, today a company's success is rated on its ability to maximize the shareholder value. And I'll explain a bit later why it matters. Next. And some naysayers will actually use the argument to say, you know, the world is going so much better, etc. That is not capitalism, that is technology. Of course, the world is less poor and in less misery than 50 years ago, but what capitalistic systems have brought is the unimaginable gaps between the super rich and the super poor. And I invite you to scan this QR code. There's an amazing little animation that you can check out later to just give you a small idea of Jeff Bezos compared to us. Oh, Sorry, next. Bueno. So now what about blockchain? Where does blockchain come into action? How does it enable to change the narrative? How does it enable to change the game? Next. The first thing is the FOSS mentality, so the free and open source software mentality. At its core, a blockchain holds a software repository that specifies the implementation of the protocol. So it means the rules. And in order to update, modify, add new features, different people connected to that set of rules need to coordinate. And this leads to horizontal governance instead of vertical hierarchy in our legacy firms. It also leads to a distributed power, where in our legacy firms, we tend to have a centralized power. And last, it leads to a management that is more transparent and accountable compared to our very opaque existing systems. Next. The second thing it's bringing is moving us from a shareholder economy to a stakeholder economy. What does that mean? So I was mentioning the fact that the holders of capital only think in terms of profit instead of taking a holistic approach to the company's needs. But we all know today that this approach has led to abysmal gig economy jobs, and also that we have a lot of in-work poverty. Stakeholder capitalism drives value in the companies into the fourth industrial revolution. The fourth industrial revolution, let's remember, it's just blurring the lines between the physical, the digital, and the biological world, which means we're getting a more and more holistic approach as to how we're going to run companies. And there's another aspect to the stakeholder economy, which means that anybody can possess a little bit of the company if that's easier, and the shareholders get to be participants, they get to be customers, employees, clients, etc. One of the other things, and Ramon mentioned it earlier, is that when you hold an asset of something, you've got skin in the game. You want it to work. And that brings us to harnessing, next, the power of the network effect. In short, where legacy brings in a new employee, this employee will bring a +1 value to the company. Whereas when you bring in stakeholders, every single person brings in an exponential value because they want for the system to better itself, for new features to appear, etc. And this is something that companies such as Facebook have really well understood. So we might think about using that. Next. So DAOs. As Nicolas mentioned, the first one that existed was in 2016, wasn't a big success. But what about today? What is happening today with DAOs? So a decentralized autonomous organization is an organization with no central leadership that has a set of rules enforced on a blockchain. Thus, it is not relying on any jurisdiction, and an opt-in system in which participants can vote for the decisions. Today, we are experimenting with DAOs, but they bring in a considerable evolution in the methods we use for governance. And I really want to enforce one aspect. It's being a transparent network is a very, very powerful tool. It enables people to speak up with an idea, spread it to the network without being silenced by your manager or getting their idea stolen. You need to have a majority of votes to agree on a proposal in order for it to be implemented. What does that bring? It brings down the hierarchical decisions, the arbitrary decision, and it brings in the collective intelligence and reduces the risk of corruption. I think that these consequences of these new methods of governance reflect a widely spread wish of our generations to see the ways we function. Next. So, coordinating the many. Yes, I'm going back to our political systems after criticizing them. What is happening? There's a lot of us, like many, many, many humans, and we have completely exploded Dunbar's number, hit our cognitive limit. We do not know as a group how to maintain cohesion. And, you know, Dunbar fixed the limit at 150. That was a bit arbitrary, but even if we multiply it 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, we are still way under the number of people any government has to decide upon. And on top of that, the geographical proximity today has lost a lot in an individual sense of identity. You don't meet your neighbor at town hall anymore. You don't discuss at church on Sundays. So you live in places where you don't know people around you. I, for example, have much more in common, I think, with a New Yorker, somebody from Cape Town, Singapore, that has my economic and social background, food habits, cultural references, than any other Belgian that lives maybe 60 kilometers away from me and has never heard of ramen, blockchain, Serious Friends, or Fabrice Lucchini. This means political systems need to find a way to coordinate people that don't know, trust, or resemble each other. And you know where that brings us to? Well, that brings us to the prisoner's dilemma, and our political states today fail at solving that. So what can we do in order to enable trust, a feeling of citizenship, coordination, and efficiency? Next, I'm going to start with efficiency. So first of all, let's enable a sandbox for our Belgian or even larger administrations to enhance their ways of functioning through blockchain. Imagine, let's take it easy. If all administrations in Belgium were connected with this like one giant Google sheet and no information is lost, everything is accessible, you might have to have certain codes to access information and everything's updating all the time. And then add to it some macros, VGA, that automate contracts between those administrations. Well, that will lead to a lot of efficiency. And you take an example such as me, when I go and do my little Modèle 8 to tell the Maison Communale that I am moving to France and that I put my change of address, it is signed, everybody agrees, and it's been 4 years now that every single time I go to a public service in Belgium, they still ask me if I live Rue Van der Kinderen. No, I don't. I live in France. Imagine if that Google sheet had been updated, how many happy Bettinas there would be around the world who didn't receive bills to their old address and had to pay crazy amounts because they never received them. Next. Yes. We're going to play a game of coordination right now with my slide friend. So the other big thing, I think, is to help citizens become stakeholders of their governments. We need to be incentivized again to become citizens. And this for me can happen on two levels. First, a very direct and effective democracy through a DAO-based commune or Gemeenten, where the residents would be able to vote on small decisions and be assured that they would be implemented. Second, is a blockchain-based quadratic voting mechanism for larger entities such as national governments and the EU. So, quadratic, that's the last word I'm introducing today. It's a new method of voting. Today we've got a couple of guys that need to vote. Every single person has 3 choices and they've got 3 votes. What happens classically? Next. Person A, next, next, next. They all vote. Ooh, somebody's missing some information. Next, next, next. Yeah, we're going on. This is the voting happening. We can still go on next. Okay, there's been some votes, there's been people agreeing, but what happened next again? Here we can see that person A has voted yes, no, no. Person B has voted no, no, yes. Person C has voted no, yes, no. And the outcome is no, no, yes. And this is our classic way of voting. If we go to quadratic voting, next slide again, every single person receives 7 votes. And they only have 3 choices. So what happens? Not only do they need to choose their preference, but they need to be nuanced. They need to decide where it's important for them to vote on. And so let's go again with the next, next, next. This person chooses that, this person chooses this. And as a result, we've got very different outcomes. But person A has still voted yes on 1, no on and B and C. Person 2 has still voted no, no, yes, and person C has still voted no, yes, no. However, this time the 3 outcomes are yes. And why do I think this is important? It's because today, as an individual, I am unable, completely unable to vote on every single decision our state nations and the EU has to make. When somebody talks to me about agriculture in Europe, I am completely lost. And we ask me as a citizen to vote with one decision once every X times to vote on everything. This is impossible. Whereas if I had to decide where my vote would be important, where I really want to choose my battles, I would be incentivized as a citizen to stay focused and interested. So next, I'm going to do a quick summary because there was a lot of words. Next, first of all, I think companies can learn a lot from the blockchain ecosystem and move towards a stakeholder economy and a more transparent, open, and flat governance. Next. DAOs have opened a new way of collaborating and working. It enabled trust with people who don't know and are a global organization. Next, public administrations would benefit from being connected to a blockchain network to improve their efficiency and automate some processes. Direct and transparent democracy will enable citizens to feel as such, again, and better coordination in smaller groups. And quadratic voting will enable citizens to be more nuanced in their choice and for democracies to be more fluid. Thank you very much.